Hello and welcome to In the Envelope, an awards podcast. I am your host, Jack Smart, the awards editor at Backstage, your guide to the acting industry and the most trusted name in casting. We're here to talk with some of the contenders of the 2017 Emmy race, who share their advice on the craft and business of becoming an award-winning actor. This season of In the Envelope is brought to you by HBO.
Well, I believe in the social Darwinism of Hollywood and Broadway. I mean, really, if you put yourself out there and do your best with all this, show business will let you know if it wants to include you or not. There's no doubt of that. It's not, show business isn't shy.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to episode 3 of In the Envelope. Perhaps my favorite episode yet? Am I allowed to play favorites?
Yeah, I think that's fair enough.
Okay, great.
Given the guests that we've got on this week.
Given the guests, we have 2 really, really amazing guests this week. Maybe you've heard of them. Elisabeth Moss is joining us first, and then Hank Azaria, both legends in their own right.
Yeah.
One is a 6-time Emmy nominee, and one is a 6-time Emmy winner. So we got the star wattage in this episode. Wattage, right?
Yeah,
that
works.
The star power. We really got the star power in this episode. Jamie, you were saying that your impression of Elisabeth Moss, given her body of work, was a little different going into this interview.
Yeah, I thought based on the caliber of the projects that she's been involved in, she would be quite serious, quite earnest. But actually, I was surprised at how playful and enthusiastic she was.
Totally.
Really lovely, really great
fun
to talk to and very down to earth and things. And clearly takes her job very seriously and is very eloquent, but also very personable as well.
Yeah, she's very accessible in talking about her craft and how she creates these characters. And right now, it's a very good time to be Elisabeth Moss because she is the leading character in Hulu's new drama, The Handmaid's Tale, which is sort of taking the world by storm with its all too relevant subject matter.
And hats.
She's giving a really great performance inside the confines of those iconic hats. In addition, she was just in a film that won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. And season 2 of Top of the Lake, which is a miniseries that she won a Golden Globe for a couple years ago, is back this year. In addition to, of course, the role that she's most well known for, Peggy Olson, on AMC's Mad Men, where she got 5 Emmy nominations. I'm thinking this year for The Handmaid's Tale that she's a definite contender. We really got into it with her.
Yeah. Should we go straight to it?
We should go straight to it.
Let's do it.
This episode is brought to you by HBO's original comedy series, Divorce, starring Sarah Jessica Parker and Thomas Hayden Church. Divorce portrays the experiences of a woman who finds that making a clean break is harder than she thought. For your Emmy consideration in Outstanding Comedy Series and all other categories. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I know that you are undoubtedly in the middle of a huge, epic press tour for this amazing new show you have.
Yeah, been doing a lot.
I bet. I know you did a lot of press for Mad Men and even for Top of the Lake, but this must be different as the lead in a series. What exactly does the campaign or the publicity aspect of Handmaid's Tale, what does that entail?
There's a couple things that are different. One, you're sort of launching a new show. So there's obviously more to do there to just sort of make people aware of what it is. And then, I think being the lead of the show definitely puts more on your shoulders as far as the press that you should do. But for me, it's been, although it's, it has been a lot, for me, it's been rewarding in the sense of I'm very proud of the show, and so to be able to talk about something that you actually enjoy talking about is much better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and going off of that, you are also the producer of this show, correct?
Yes, one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And so how does that factor into the campaigning, especially campaigning for Emmy season itself?
It really just factors so much into the pre-production, production, and post-production. As far as just the work, I've honestly been working on the show for over a year now because I signed on in April of last year. And when we wrapped shooting in February, we continued on in post up until, there's still, I they just mixed 10,
Oh, wow.
which, yeah. And then, so yeah, 10 isn't even quite done yet, but it's basically done. And then we immediately started sort of rolling right into season 2. So now so the second the post sort of finished on 1, pre on 2 has started. So, so now it just sort of feels like it hasn't ended.
Right. I can't believe you can handle anything else on your schedule. You're also Top of the Lake season 2 is coming up, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you were in a short film at Tribeca Film Festival. I mean, you are everywhere at the moment.
Yeah. It's been a good couple of years. Top of the Lake is coming up soon, and then I had another film at Tribeca as well called Chuck, formerly called The Bleeder, and and then I have another film at Cannes that I'm really excited about called The Square. So it's good. I think it always looks to people as if everything is sort of happening at once, but it's how it is. It's of course it's spread out.
Sure. I mean, when we last spoke, you were in previews for the Heidi Chronicles on Broadway as Mad Men was wrapping up. So you were somehow simultaneously rehearsing while doing press for that show. It does seem like, even though there are peaks and valleys in your schedule, that it seems that you're busy all the time, and that's just how it goes.
Yeah, it has kind of been a pretty intense year and a half, 2 years, honestly. That was a crazy time. That was not ideal, doing press while doing 8 shows a week.
Right.
But you can't really pick and choose when these things happen. You just kind of have to throw all in and do as much as you can, and also try to protect yourself and make sure that you're able to do the work that you need to do.
Right. Well, and I've always wondered, in terms of the Emmy, I suppose also for Tony nominations as well, but you get an Emmy nomination, or even before you get an Emmy nomination, do you decide, here's my plan of attack, here's exactly what I'm going to be doing to campaign for this award? Do you think of it as a campaign, and who do you work with to make that happen?
I suppose you can think of it as a campaign. Yeah. I mean, for me, I work with, I have a fantastic team, and my publicist, Erica Gray, I've worked with for, I guess, 5 years now or so, maybe longer. And at this point, she knows me so well that, it's fantastic, because, we're also friends, and there's just not a lot of, what do you want to do? What do you not want to do? She basically knows what I am interested in and what I'm not. And it's all very sort of civilized. And I think that for us, we don't think of it necessarily in those terms. It's more about getting the word out about the show, and getting people to watch it and getting people to enjoy it. And then whatever comes from that is just the cherry on top,
Gotcha.
I mean, for me, the best work that I can do is there on the stage, or is there on the screen. That's the work that I put in, and that's the work that I enjoy doing the most. And all of the other stuff is important, but obviously, as an artist, is secondary. And that's why I have people who can worry about it for me.
Right.
So that I can worry about acting, which is what I really like to do.
Exactly. Right. Like, it's nice to win a Golden Globe for a role, but it's even nicer if winning that Golden Globe means that more people will see that show, right?
That's exactly right. It's like, if for us, getting picked up for a second season of The Handmaid's Tale, that was the goal. You know, that's what we wanted. We wanted that because we wanted the chance to be able to tell more of the story, and because I so enjoy and love playing that character. So for me, that's the big win, is being able to go back and play that character more. I think it's important as an artist to have a great team in place that can worry about all of that stuff that surrounds it, all the hubbub and the award shows and the press and everything, so that you don't have to. So you can do your job, which is for me, whether it's going out and doing 8 shows a week, or doing, 70, 80-hour weeks on Handmaid's Tale, that's where my heart lies,
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, you've also, I'd love to get into it about Offred and who she is. you told backstage that playing a character is like putting on a good pair of jeans. And I'm wondering, is that true for this character?
Yeah, I suppose so. It really is. You know, with somebody like Offred, I mean, you have this built-in, these built-in stakes that are so incredible for an actress. You know, after Mad Men and sort of Top of the Lake and various film roles, for me, I'm always looking for, okay, what can I do that's going to challenge me, and what can I do that's going to be challenging from what I've done before, and then you get handed The Handmaid's Tale, this dystopian, you know, theocracy, totalitarian government, you know, with the sort of these women enslaved, and you know, your family ripped from your arms, and as an actor, you go, okay, yeah, that's challenging. That'll do it.
Right. Gives you something to work with.
Yeah, it really does. You know, it's such a step up challenge wise to have these giant stakes that I have to deal with in every episode. And then also this feeling of now in season 2, you know, we have so much left to say, and there's so many more places that we can go. And it just seems like the field is kind of wide open, which is really exciting.
Oh, I can't wait.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a really this season was honestly every single script, every single episode. I sort of had thought that I had done my most challenging work in the previous episode. And then I would get the new script and be like, oh, great.
Yeah, the stakes somehow.
I was wrong. This is going to be the hardest one.
Yeah. Well, and you also do a ton of really amazing voiceover work in this series that it feels unprecedented. It's not a complicated trick, but you are there on camera and you're not speaking a word. But in voiceover, Offred is narrating her actions and what she's seeing and what she's thinking. And you've said that you've lined up each piece of narration with each shot. So I'm wondering, how do you get in the same mindset in the recording studio and then on camera for each specific moment?
Yeah, I actually found that the whole voiceover process was extremely helpful for me. You know, when we did the first episode, we recorded. It was the only time that we recorded the voiceover before we shot. After we started shooting, we refined the process because I felt that it was important to shoot first and then do the voiceover afterwards. But it was actually very helpful for the first episode because I sort of started to find June in that little dark studio, and I got a chance to kind of practice, for lack of a better word, and try to explore who she was before I got on camera. And then I just found that the voiceover was also extremely helpful in the sense of, here you have, you know, in a scene, you're always supposed to be having some sort of inner life. I mean, you're not supposed to be just standing there like a statue. And for me, I had this beautiful voiceover written out in the script that I could memorize and I could listen to or say in my head as I was doing a scene. So it was kind of perfect for me as an actor because, I mean, what's better than that? Having this sort of inner life written out for you on the page. I mean, it was fantastic. So between that and the book and using whatever inner life or, you know, first person narrative that was in the book, I found it all kind of extremely helpful. And then, you know, I treated every voiceover as if it was, you know, a shooting day or an acting session. You know, it wasn't just for, there's a difference between that and ADR, you know, when you do the post-production looping sound. For me, voiceover was very different. I usually stand up for ADR. For voiceover, I'd sit down. It was like acting without a camera. I mean, I really tried to make sure I was giving it as much of my heart and soul in a recording studio as I would if I was on camera. And I think that that is why I think you can hear that, which was my intention.
Gosh, that's so cool. I want to ask you some rapid fire questions, and you can answer from the gut.
Okay, you got it.
All right. Who is your favorite actor right now?
God, but I don't know why I just totally blanked. Loving. I mean, I always say Marion Cotillard because I just think everything she does is absolute genius.
Excellent. Yes. Wonderful. Last TV show you watched, I guess, other than Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, I'm watching 13 Reasons Why right now.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, and my next question is, when was the last time you saw something in a TV show that made you just sit up and go, wow, like that is an amazing performance?
Oh my God. The thing is, there's so many incredible performances on TV right now.
Sure.
I would have to say Jessica Lange in Feud.
Yeah, cool.
I mean, there's literally nothing better than that woman and that part. I mean, it's like, the whole thing is just incredible. And by those last couple of episodes, I don't know if you've seen it.
Oh, yes.
Man, oh man, what she does, the vulnerability, oh my God, the fragility that she brings to this woman who is generally known to be the coldest, harshest woman in history, in cinematic history, and she just makes her this like wilting, beautiful flower. Oh, I could go on and on.
I know I feel like we are not worthy of that performance of Joan Crawford herself. It's so true.
I agree. And I also want to see like 10 more hours of just Jessica Lange playing Joan Crawford.
Well, and for me, that show, I miss Mad Men so much. And I miss like the feel of Mad Men and the era and the costumes. And so for me, that show kind of filled that gap for me a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for actors or theater people, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like fabulous broad actresses in amazing costumes, divas. Like, I mean, the whole thing is just like, you can just eat it up, eating it up.
Yes, that's the best. Well, and so going off of that, this is such a broad question, but what is great acting to you?
I think great acting is telling the story that the writer intended to tell. I mean, that's all it really is. That's why I look for good writing, because you can only be as good as the writing is. And, I don't think there's anything that defines a good performance or a bad performance, or good acting versus bad acting. There's so many different ways that you can play a role, but for me, it's the writing that the writer wrote is what is on the page and what is intended. Do you feel that when you watch? Are you feeling what the writer intended you to feel? And that to me is what good acting is supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It does kind of all come back to writing, doesn't it? That very first step.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about what the writer intended the audience to feel, because they may not be pleasant feelings, or they may not be expected feelings, but is it what was intended? Then yes. And that's a good performance.
Excellent. What about, last question, your number one piece of audition advice for actors who want to star on television or even win an Emmy Award?
Gosh, there's so many I could give. I would say the number one piece of advice that I ever received was from Jane Campion for Top of the Lake before my audition. I talked to her on the phone, and she said to me, "Don't worry about hitting the bullseye, just get the dart on the board." And for me, that was the greatest gift she could have given me, because it sort of released any anxiety that I felt. I was still really nervous, but it just made me feel like I wasn't trying to win a Tony in that audition. I was just trying to give an approximation, a sort of a dart on the board of what this character might be. And I think that without any rehearsal, without any talking with the director, without anything like that, that's the best you can do, And I think there's something about that advice that also releases something in you and lets you relax a little bit and lets you not try to achieve some sort of idea of what you think they're looking for, which they may not even be looking for. So,
right. Yeah, that's excellent advice.
Okay, good. Well, it was good advice for me. I did get the part, so I'm passing it on.
And one goal. And that's interesting. Worked. That was only a couple of years ago that you got that advice. It must have been.
It was, no, it was about 5 years ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, not that long ago. And I still use it. I still use that advice. Like, if I have to go in for an interview or an audition, I still do it. I still go, you know what? Just get the dart on the board. Don't worry about the bullseye.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wonderful. Gosh, thank you so much for taking the time. This is great.
You're welcome. Is that it? I could talk about acting all day.
I would love to talk about acting all day. I would love to ask the question of like, step by step, how does an actor win an Emmy Award? But I'm not sure if that's something that you want to discuss, especially as you gave such a great answer about like, of course it's about the work first, and any of the publicity or any of the campaigning or any of the actual awards are essentially icing on the cake, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what it is. I think anyone that, I think you get yourself into a dangerous place if that's what you're trying to do when you're when you're performing, and when we're also living in a world right now where there's so many incredible performances, so how do you even, I don't know how one even ever chooses. There's so much great work out there, and sometimes you're in and sometimes you're out. And I think you have to just I think the way to remain sane and the way to also the way to, preserve your integrity is to always concentrate on the work first and put that first and make sure that you're proud of what you did and you gave it your all and you worked as hard as you could and you did everything you could for yourself and for your own performance and your own integrity. And beyond that, I mean, Lord knows. If anyone knows, they can feel free to tell me because
right.
Because I just don't think there is any formula. I think you just do the best work you can, and like you said, whatever else happens is icing on the cake, and that includes reviews, and that includes good press, and includes it all. It's just it's all just cherries on top.
Absolutely. Well, you are doing some of the best work out there. You are certainly doing the best work. I've seen recently in terms of TV dramas. And
thank you.
Thank you so much for chatting with us.
I'm honored. It's fantastic, and I can't wait to listen to more. I will definitely be listening.
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us on In the Envelope. Fingers crossed on 1 million Emmy nominations for The Handmaid's Tale.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good one, Elizabeth.
We'll see. Thank you so much. Take care.
Talk soon.
Bye.
This episode is brought to you by HBO's original drama series, The Leftovers, starring Justin Theroux and Carrie Coon. Expect the unexpected as this Peabody Award-winning series prepares for the 7th anniversary of The Departure. For your Emmy consideration in Outstanding Drama Series and all other categories. Up next, we have someone who I and many others consider to be TV royalty, Hank Azaria. A 6-time Emmy Award winner, 4 for his work on Fox series The Simpsons, maybe you've heard of it, 1 for a 2000 TV movie called Tuesdays with Morrie, and 1 just last season for his guest role on Showtime's Ray Donovan. This year, Hank stars in the TV movie Wizard of Lies, but we're here mostly to talk about his work in the new IFC comedy Brockmire, where he plays a disgraced baseball announcer who has a mental breakdown on the air, and the series only gets funnier from there. He is hilarious, of course, and insightful, and has plenty of wisdom for working actors everywhere. Here's my interview with Hank Azaria. I would love to hear first about Jim Brockmire. Who is he? How would you describe this man you play in your IFC series?
Boy, that's a good question. He's a charismatic, alcoholic, disgraced baseball announcer who melted down on the air rather spectacularly 10 years ago after he walked in on his wife and shared much too much about it in much too graphic a fashion in the baseball broadcast without ever missing the action of the game or failing to give the count. Because he's a pro, if nothing else, he remained a pro.
Yeah.
And then is trying to make it back into baseball 10 years later, thinking everyone's forgotten about him by now, not realizing that he's a meme, that he's a cultural icon, thanks to social media. And then hilarity ensues as the man tries to make his way back into society, American society, anyway.
Well, and the character was first performed to him in a short video in 2010, I believe. So this has been kind of a long time coming, right?
Yeah, and it was even longer built up into that. It's a character I've been doing in one way or another since I was a teenager. And then finally we did it as a short, about 8-9 years ago. And then with the idea that if it were popular, which it did become, we would develop it. And it first was a movie, which actually got bought, and we were in pre-production for it, lost its financing 4 days before shooting. And then we reconfigured it, spent some time trying to get it made, and then couldn't, and then reconfigured it as a cable series pitch, which, in the end, as always, these things go, it's really its best incarnation. It was, I think, what it was always meant to be. And so all's well that ends well, but it was a long and winding road.
Sure, as it often is, right?
Yes.
And it's interesting, too, that this is a character built around this voice, I should say, that is based on real life people, right? Real life sports announcers, for one thing.
Well, definitely. I mean, I'm a big sports fan, big baseball fan, and I grew up really mostly in front of the television. That's where I took in Monty Python, where I took in baseball, where I took in Bugs Bunny, where I took in the Brady Bunch, Johnny Carson. I mean, everything. Imitated it, found I could mimic stuff at a pretty young age. This was one of the voices I imitated, was this, what I call the generic baseball announcer voice in the 70s, really generic announcer voice, not just baseball.
Yeah.
And not just sports. And always thought it would be a funny, it stuck out to me as it's kind of hilarious in its own way, if you put it in the proper context. Only took 30, 40 years, but I eventually figured out what context would be funny for this guy.
Well, and I've heard you say that most, if not all, of your voiceover performances are based on this crazy, uncanny ability you have to imitate the people you hear, everyone you hear, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess all vocal work is imitation on some level. And if you're trying to do a faithful French accent or British accent or, Polish accent, you're imitating what you're hearing. Once you get into mimicry, it's into specific, right, folks, like whether it's Matthew McConaughey or, Al Pacino, whoever you're imitating, mimicking. And that's a sort of special skill that you either can do or you can't. You're kind of genetically capable of that. If you have plastic vocal cords or you don't. To some extent, you can develop it, but I think that it's sort of something you're either born able to do or you aren't, which I was. And so, I find that most of my voices on The Simpsons or everywhere are either very good or very bad impressions of people. I tell young, vocal performers this all the time. A bad vocal impression is still a lovely character voice on its own, just because it's not, if you're imitating your Uncle Steve, even if it's not a very good impression of him, if I heard you go, your Uncle Steve doesn't really sound like that, it might be a very interesting character voice, and the general public doesn't care if it sounds a lot like your Uncle Steve or not.
Right. And you can create an interesting character using that as kind of the base to build on.
Exactly.
Yeah, very cool. As you know, we're backstage. Did you ever use backstage for auditions growing up in New York?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when I was starting out in my early 20s, this is back in mid to late 80s. That's kind of all you had. There was no online to go to. There was only a couple of publications. You'd pick them up and see who was casting and where you could go. And I don't think I ever actually got a job. Based on, but definitely went out, got a lot of audition experience, nothing else.
There you go. And that audition experience was practice, right?
Totally. And I tell young actors this as well. If you have downtime, take a class, study, whether it's improv, whether it's with a serious coach, whether it's an audition class, a commercial class, doesn't matter. A writing class, just continue to work the end of stuff you can control, which isn't too much, but it is your own deftness with your craft. I mean, that is in your control. The rest of show business is wildly out of your control.
Right. And for the wildly out of your control bit, you just have to know that rejection is a part of the industry and learn how to cope with that, right?
Yeah. In a word, yes, right? I mean, I've been through a lot with auditioning. I talk to young actors about this a lot as well. Lately, I've been chatting with folks about this, and the Zen paradox of, let's say you go out on 3 auditions a week for a year. So quickly doing the math, that's like 150 or so auditions. Okay, if you book 10% of them, you book 15 of them. That's a huge. I don't know anybody who ever does that. So let's put that out.
Right.
If you book 5 of them, you get 5 good jobs. Right out of that. That's a pretty great year.
Sure.
So you're 5 out of 150. That's 145 no's, rejections on one level or another. That's a tremendous amount of rejection in a tremendously successful year you just had.
Yeah, wow.
So, those 5 jobs come let's say every couple of months. So in between those, that's a lot of no's. We'll kind of know yes in sight. You don't know for sure. Oh, don't worry. On February 16th, you'll definitely get a job. I mean, you don't get to know that. So you're hanging with, on the one hand, you're so fortunate to be getting all those no's because it's not so easy even to be auditioning that much. That's a tremendous accomplishment.
Yeah.
But staying positive in the face of all that becomes like your job as an actor. And that's a skill you'll need to continue throughout your career. If you're fortunate enough to be successful, if you're fortunate enough to not have to audition anymore, you're still going to be dealing with rejection and a lot of it, like jobs you're not offered, people who, maybe you don't get to audition, but they already think they know who you are. They don't even want to see you. The answer is just no.
Right.
Or you work really hard for 6 months on a project and people don't like it. It's not received well.
Yeah.
All these are forms of rejection that what the early part of your career is training you to do is roll with that.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. Well, and your involvement in The Simpsons is always so interesting to me, like how you weren't you didn't have a ton of voiceover experience before that gig. And now it's funny you say that there's tons of rejections even at the highest level and there's going to be lulls. I mean, you've been on this show since it first started airing. How did you get involved and how did that kind of carve your place in Hollywood?
Yeah, I mean, I really did win the show business lottery the day that I got that job, because although it wasn't that apparent, back in that day, 30 years ago, I had done another job for Fox Television. This was back in the days of Roger Rabbit. Everybody was trying to make some kind of combination of animation with live action, and Fox did a pilot like that where this dog called Hollywood Dog was animated. I did the voice of it. That was a failed pilot that never saw the light of day, but Fox became familiar with me because of that. And there was an open audition it was an open call, like you would read in Backstage, but it was an audition for the voice of Mo the bartender. And because the casting director had heard of me from that, I went in and read for it and got the job. But that was, it was a voiceover gig in the early days of Fox. You never knew that any show was going to last, let alone last for 30 years. Right. It wasn't until about a year or two into The Simpsons, that they made me a regular. And then it wasn't until a few years into the job that I realized, wow, I'm part of not only a steady gig, but kind of a cultural phenomenon. And then it's just the gift that kept giving over the years. Yeah. And I learned a ton, especially from all of them over there, but especially from Dan Castellaneta, who does the voice of Homer and others, and Harry Shearer, who does Mr. Burns and many others. Those guys were such master craftsmen doing vocal work that, watching them do it for years and their commitment and how, on the one hand, it was very easy for them and they had a very light touch. On the other hand, they were very diligent about how they went about things. Not to mention for a voice guy, which I am, but didn't even know I was. Right. It was it's like a lab. It was like every week I was called on to do 2, 3, 4 new voices year after year. And it's like an incredible training ground for a vocal character actor. I mean, right. So whatever skill I had got really honed, doing that.
Which is true of a gig where you have multiple characters to play. You have one gig, but multiple characters.
Yeah. Then I found that, then having done that for a few years, then studying with Roy London really kind of deepened that was sort of all about, for me, being myself, not being a voice or not being funny, but just kind of being myself on stage, which I was much more uncomfortable doing than, doing the voice of Chief Wiggum or something. But when I started, to combine those two skills of bringing myself to a role and then also providing an amusing voice for it, that I found, I even found my Simpsons work, my vocal work got funnier, got better. And to bring the conversation full circle, that's really what I feel like I'm getting into with Brockmire. It's like it's a funny voice, it's a fun imitation, and it's funny just to listen to. But I feel like the work I did with Roy and the acting work I've done for 30 years, I get to really kind of bring all that to bear. It's very satisfying on that level.
Absolutely. I mean, the show is hilarious, and you have these really hilarious zingers, but it's also, he is very much a real grounded character, and there's some really dark, uncomfortably dark elements to it. So I hear what you're saying about you're bringing the personal to it at the same time that you're able to not hide behind a voice, but use a voice to get at that truth.
Yeah, or sometimes both, and I was fortunate enough to hook up with a really wonderful young writer named Joel Church Cooper, who kind of saw more depth and darkness in it than I did even when I created the character. And with a really extraordinary director named Tim Kirkby, who's done a ton of stuff, but is very, very gifted at being sensitive to and aware of and capturing all characters, the kind of the emotional truth and darkness, as you just said, of people, while not losing the joke or losing the comedy pacing or, losing the surface of what needs to be there. But he's highly aware of the depth of the thing, which really came through, I think, as well.
Absolutely. Because this is our very first podcast that we've launched, and we're still sort of finding our way, but I'd love to ask you about your relationship with awards in general, but specifically with the Emmys. You have won 6 acting Emmys for your work on television. Congratulations, by the way. And
thank you.
And so I'm wondering, what is it like? First of all, what does it entail? And how does it feel to have reached that level?
It's great. It's very gratifying. I'd be crazy to say it's annoying. Right. And it's not. But, awards are interesting. First of all, I've won 4 for The Simpsons. Those are what they call craft Emmys, which they don't give out at the Emmy Awards that you see on television. There's another show that happens a week before that where they give out a lot of technical awards, and they include voiceovers in that category as well as guest actor, which I won last year. If you win as guest actor, you get to present at the Big Boy Emmys the following week, which was what happened to me last year. Yeah. There's only one time where I ever had the experience of sitting in the, being nominated. When I won for Tuesdays at Maury, I won Best Supporting Actor in a drama movie. And that I had the experience of sitting there in the audience, having your name read out of an envelope. Boy, that's a real adrenaline rush. It's really exciting.
Sure. And,
it just feels like you would imagine it would, having seen it on TV a bunch of times. But, the truth about awards is, it's a cliche. They say it's an honor just to be nominated. It really is, because any given year, who actually wins, who actually doesn't win, it's a little arbitrary. Like, I guess in general, they get the right person, but, sometimes they're just awarding people for their careers and not so much the role that they did that particular time, or sometimes they're awarding people sometimes it's just a timing thing. Like, well, that just came out more recently, so it's more fresh in people's minds. Sometimes that has a lot to do with who actually wins, or just who had a better press campaign going into the thing, who got more exposed and who had a better story leading into it. It's kind of like the MVP award in sports. It's generally a meritocracy, but it also has to do with the moment and things that besides the actual performance. Then you kind of get into this argument like, well, can you actually really say what's better? Like, how do you actually compare the apples and oranges of one performance to another? So over time, what I'm really kind of most proud of is having been nominated a bunch of times, and people feel like consistently my work deserves that kind of attention.
Yeah.
Any given year, it's in a way you feel like the awards you win, it's like, I actually think I deserved it more for this thing I did 3 years ago.
Yeah, right.
But, I guess it all evens out in the end. Or I didn't think I really did deserve it for this one I last won, but all right, I'm happy to take it.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's cool. You mentioned the publicity aspect of it too. Like when you're promoting a new show like Brockmire and you want it to be picked up for season 2, which congratulations, it's been picked up for season 2. But do you sit down and make a plan with your team for how to do the publicity aspect of it?
Yes, absolutely. Publicity like that is a commodity. It's part of your job. It's absolutely what you owe the studio, the network, and yourself. I mean, awards bring attention to a show. So partly from being like personal victories. I mean, they're meaningful from a business standpoint. I mean, if like Brockmire won, 3 Emmys, yeah, I promise you our audience would enlarge, which is a big deal, for advertisers and the network and all kinds of things. So it's part of, the show business machinery. And you need to honor it by, doing your part and promoting it as much as you can. I mean, it's also personal and personal glory and blah, blah, blah. But it's a business.
Absolutely. Well, and maybe this is too broad a question, but how can a backstage actor or how can any aspiring actor win an Emmy? Like, what is the step-by-step process needed to get to that point?
Well, I'm pretty sure, first of all, you definitely need to be working in television. So that would be definite. But, that was a fairly glib answer, but it's all, to me, a career is about next indicated step and kind of getting to the next level, So the first thing is, for a backstage actor, it's getting out there, getting seen, learning your craft, controlling the things you can control, like I said, which is where you study, how you improve, getting auditions. Like that was a big threshold. Like we were saying in the beginning of the conversation. I mean, even being in a position where you're being rejected 100 times in a year, that's a huge accomplishment to get out there and be seen that much.
Absolutely.
That's kind of phase one. Get an agent, get out there and get seen, then getting jobs, then getting good enough at your craft where you're getting singled out and getting better jobs and getting the kind of roles that might get considered for an award. I skipped no step in my career. I wasn't like walking around at age 22 and got plucked out and, starring in the next big movie. I, got a line here, got a line there, got a recurring role, got some guest spots, did a bunch of pilots, never saw the light of day, finally got on a series, wasn't great, but at least I learned a lot and worked consistently. I had a few key breaks along the way, but, I was ready for them, right? What's the saying, the old Chinese saying, luck is where preparation meets opportunity.
Absolutely.
What you can control is the preparation, and all you can do is kind of focus on what you can do, what's within your reach that day. And if you do that for enough days in a row, eventually you may find yourself with a nomination.
That's excellent advice. I'm sure if actors follow it, they will be on that Emmy stage in no time.
Or they won't.
Or they won't. And, that's okay too.
Well, I believe in the social Darwinism of Hollywood and Broadway. I mean, really, if you put yourself out there and do your best with all this, show business will let you know if it wants to include you or not. You have no doubt of that. It's not, show business isn't shy. It'll tell you what it thinks of you.
That's good advice too. Absolutely. I'm going to ask you a couple kind of rapid fire questions that you can answer from the heart. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. Who is, as of this moment, your favorite actor?
Bryan Cranston.
Ooh, wonderful. We might be including him on this podcast as well.
Oh, cool. He's an awesome, not only is he a great actor, he's a great guy.
Cool. What was the last TV show you watched?
I am currently binge watching Legion.
Oh, cool.
I'm enjoying it very much.
Excellent. What about the last on-screen performance that really made you sit up and take notice? A really great performance or moment of acting?
There have been several. I must say, just last night, keeping with the Legion thing, I was pretty struck with Dan Stevens' work. That guy deserves an Emmy nomination, in my opinion.
Oh, sure.
Oh, I have I'll answer that question self-servingly by plugging 2 projects I'm in.
Sure.
I have a movie right now. I have a small part in a movie called Norman with Richard Gere, and Richard Gere's work in it, I must say, is kind of breathtaking.
Cool.
And I was also fortunate enough to be in this HBO movie about Bernie Madoff called The Wizard of Lies. And De Niro, Michelle Pfeiffer, Alessandro Nivola, and Nathan Darrow, all of who play the immediate Madoff family, are all stunning in it. Really stunning.
Wonderful.
They're incredible.
Yeah, I'm so excited to
That'll
see.
be on May 20th.
Well, and so what is great acting to you?
I'll answer the way my late great actor teacher, Roy London, would answer that. He would say that great actors, they are willing on a stage or on camera to share their honest selves, to be really authentically who they are in front of people, which sounds like a simple thing. But like I said, for me, I was comfortable. I became an actor because I wanted to be other people besides myself. I wanted to imitate, others, Woody Allen, Al Pacino, De Niro, Steve Martin. I wanted to mimic and imitate, and I found I could mimic them rather convincingly. So that's what I wanted to do. Much to my chagrin, I discovered that to be a good actor, let alone be a great actor, you needed to kind of share yourself honestly in front of people. And I was very uncomfortable doing that. I had this kind of deep-seated belief that not only was I not comfortable doing it, and I was afraid to do it, but I had a belief that it was uninteresting. That, De Niro is interesting. Who am I? So, but it wasn't until Roy convinced me that, look, that might be true, but it's all I have, really. Those are the only colors I can paint with are who I really am. And it was only until I really gave into that and was willing to just kind of honestly be myself in any given role, even if I was sounding like Jim Brockmire or sounding like Agador from The Simpsons or like the French Stunter in Monty Python, whatever. I had to, Hank had to be who I really was, had to be the motor of all that. The greats, the De Niros and Streeps and Gene Hackmans and Bryan Cranstons of the world are willing to do that in every given moment. Pretty great to watch.
Yeah, that was an amazing answer. Thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Jack. Pleasure talking to you.
And keep breaking legs out there.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
All right, Hank, have a good one.
Everybody, binge watch Jim Brockmire. You won't regret it. I promise. Money back guarantee if you don't laugh and want to watch the next one.
Awesome. So who knew that the key to winning multiple Emmy Awards and to being considered TV royalty is be your authentic self.
Yeah.
As much as possible, right?
Yeah, that sounds easier said than done.
Absolutely. As with all the advice we've heard so far. But
I suppose it comes with the confidence of winning 6 Emmys and being on a huge show.
And like Hank said, just putting in the work and facing a lot of rejection and putting in your paces. It helps that he was on one of the most successful television shows of all time, of course.
But he'd paid his dues by that point.
That's right.
He'd done an awful lot of auditions.
Yep. Well, I'm really glad that we got one of the kings of voiceover onto our podcast.
Yeah.
And heard his dulcet tones over the sound of the airwaves, because that guy is really something.
Yeah, really close to my heart.
Yeah.
That subject matter. So
absolutely. Between him and Elizabeth Moss.
This was the voiceover episode.
Oh, yeah. This is so great how different themes keep emerging in each episode. I certainly didn't start out
It's almost like we didn't plan it. And if any actors do become successful as a result of listening to this podcast,
please
we'll take 10%.
Well, let us know, and we will have you on next season of In the Envelope. Reese Witherspoon, if you're listening, please come on the podcast. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe for more interviews from the front lines of the 2017 Emmy race. In the Envelope is recorded at Lotus Productions and Hyperbolic Audio in New York City. Special thanks this week to Elizabeth Moss and Hank Azaria. Thank you for joining us. Thanks, as always, to producer, editor, and all-around podcast whiz, Jamie Muffett, and to the team at Backstage, the most trusted name in casting, Peter Rappaport, Ryan Remstad, Jesse Balashek, Francis Ramos, Rawan Al-Khatib, and especially the incandescent Casey Howe. Thanks so much. For more awards and industry coverage, head over to Backstage.com. Thanks for listening, guys. Tune in next week for another glimpse in the envelope.